found is some of the Deepseek, classic example, ask about Tiananmen Square, right? It can't talk about it. So there are limits in governors.
Well, that's sorry, break. That's what 1776 by Perplexity was for. Thank you for listening to the Salem Business Journal AI podcast. We'd like to thank Clutch Industries and Compass Visuals. And we'd also like to thank you for watching. So where were we before I had to stop and do an introduction? We had just discussed that Manus was, just a rendition of Claude, that AI operator didn't necessarily perform as desired, and that that Deepseek was just a distilled version of one of Chatty's models that we could remember. But have you heard about Google's latest release?
So I have heard that Google's moving. It's interesting because each one of these different AIs moves ahead, one gets behind. Google's been left in the dust, so to speak, but they're a powerhouse. They were doing this before. I mean, they had their deprecated chatbot.
They were well in the lead until they released an LLM, and then Google was going, what seemed like the opposite direction.
Yeah, and I don't know, maybe the team at Google, and we don't want to disparage anybody, is getting like Intel a little less focused on doing things today. Right. But Google has a huge data set, right? And I think they originally held back because they were probably scared of what they could produce and where it could go. Now you've got so many different variants coming out that they're going to be the most conservative group that I think we've seen. Right.
No, well, I just played with it a little earlier today. It was, from what I could tell, it performed about the same as everything else. But according to, all of the people we stay in the media with, the AI news update kind of people, it absolutely is first on every leaderboard. I didn't check Chatbot Arena.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to see.
But I imagine if it has the reviews that everyone says and the performance, even 75% of those, it'll probably be first in most areas. The one specifically that I saw a lot of was the same thing. Sonnet 3.7 was the last model from Anthropic for Claude, I believe. But that's the base for vibe coding now. That's the gold standard for the natural language coding. But that new Google, I think it's still called Gemini, was allegedly
crushing.
Absolutely annihilating.
So I guess we have to go back, because if people are tuning in or at least trying to listen and they go, I don't use AI, what are they talking about? Right? That's probably, if we bring it back, hopefully they're looking at it.
Yeah, before we get too deep, because, you and I, and it can go on this for hours. And that's why you're our first, that's why you're our first guest in the opening, the opening intro to this, to really explain what we do. But why don't you explain who you are? And what you feel as if the reasons that we brought you here to be the star first guest and hopefully longtime returning guest on our AI podcast.
Well, thank you as star. My name's Chris Blackburn. I'm with a company called Clutch Industries, and I've got a number of other projects that I have the privilege of being part of with my team. IT company, we do real estate development. We build apartments. We're doing some cluster cottages, which is really exciting. And so I've been in the computer. I've had a computer pretty much tied to my hip for the last 20 years, right? I've burned through a lot of computers. The IT side got me kind of at least interested in more the networking. And then the AI was something really interesting as we followed it forever. And then finally, when it became functional 3 years ago, right? Funny story of writing my family's Christmas cards with the first version of ChatGPT, right? And then talking nonstop about this AI, watching lots of videos, how it's literally going to fundamentally change everything, right? And take out, in this case, a lot of white collar jobs. And I got busted, I think, several months later from my daughter saying, we were in Disneyland and I had said something else about AI. And my oldest daughter said, you wrote our Christmas cards with AI, right? And that was my introduction to my wife with AI, that she was very frustrated, but she understood you don't just write them because they were heartfelt. They basically told a story
Well, they were outlined by AI, and then the edits came in from you. You
The prompt engineering.
You gave not only the prompt, but you gave the final draft as well.
Yeah.
Even if the middle and the meat were things that you could have thought of, it was at least 45 minutes, or the time spent on the card at least made it easier and at least gave you direction of where to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that evolution, which I think is it 3 years ago? It's a significant amount of time.
End of 2022, I believe.
Yeah. And so now we are looking at such fundamental changes. And if you're using AI, you can use it for a lot of things. There's different AIs. Chat is probably the biggest one people use. Anthropic. There are a whole host of additional AIs. I think the bigger piece, as you're talking about Gemini, but the bigger piece is this automation or AI agents, where if you compare Gemini, we've been using Grok. I've really liked Grok Deep Research, right? I think it's been exceptional. But if you look at them and they all are getting 90%, right? It's kind of concerning because you go, well, how much better is one? It becomes some semantics between what you think is better and what I think is better when you get in that 90%. It's now, can it actuate on the advice it's giving? Can it then, if it gives you a whole program of how you need to increase the social media posts, and it tells you need to post this much, it needs to be relevant, it needs to be connected, you need to talk to the audience, you need to give. And then it says, after that, it says, would you like me to do that? That's what we're getting into. And that's what we're getting into this year. That's the fundamental change. That's where the jobs will be adjusted if you're not using it. That's where I think in 6 months, we're going to be very excited about what we see, and it's also going to be really scary.
Well, I think that so far it's taken a little longer to become what everyone has predicted, and they've predicted correctly of what it will do and how many jobs it will take, and kind of the transformation. I'm not saying everyone, but I think in the upcoming year, 2 years, because it's going at an exponential rate, it will get to that point. And like you said, these AI agents are really the prediction that everyone had originally, because I don't think a generative LLM is going to give the same response to something hyper specific, like a doctor's note or a lawyer's memo or anything like that. It doesn't matter if you're a welder taking pictures of maybe the cross. Oh, should I go arc on this, or is a MIG okay? I don't know. I think it's about this line, and whatever it is. Or whether you're, one of those high professional white collar jobs, there's uses in everything, but it's those specific agents hyper trained on something that we've been looking for. And now that we have them, I think that's exactly, where this is going to go and what's going to start to explode. Because like you said, if everyone's roughly the same, I only use Perplexity and Grok, both for the deep research, but to double check each other at this point, because I don't pay the 200 yet for the
operator, right? For the operator, which it's kind of slow and clunky, right? I was using it to find, I've got 26 lots on the coast, right? Beautiful lots. And I need to find all the coast home builders, right? And there's a number of ways to do that. You can go on, you can go to Reddit, and if you look right now, there's a post on Reddit. I kind of gave back. I said, here's all the builders I found. Does anyone have any comments? I don't want negative ones, but does anyone like these? Reddit gets to be kind of a hate fest, and that's not the point. I don't want anyone to be disparaged.
It snowballs one way or another, typically, and
you never know. And I typically have no karma, unfortunately. But there's also ways like Angie's List has a number of builders and some positive. But you could also look, and I had Operator. It jumped into the Oregon State Business Registry. It started searching for home builders and then looking for addresses at the coast. And the only thing I had to do was put in a CAPTCHA. It had to have me stop. It couldn't do that. And so it said manually take over and put in the CAPTCHA. And then it continued to pull data, searching slow and clunky. I think it would have been better to do a SQL query, grab the data, and then I could have uploaded it, grabbed it all. And so was it perfect? No, it should have been able to know that it can pull the whole data file, upload it, and then grab everything I need in all the fields, right? Then what I wanted to do, I'd wanted to go find the website for them, the person, and there's a number of different ones they can use. I don't know if you saw I don't think it was Harvard, but the guys who put the meta glasses on and they walked around and it would take a look at you, go search it, and then it would tell them all about it. Really amazing.
I've seen that. I have.
I think with AI, if you are not good remembering, I've met a lot of people. I've always been not great with names, but to have these glasses on and say, hey, remember that guy? You met him here. And it's this little icon. It's horrible and it's great for bad uses. When they were using those glasses, they literally would walk up to someone and say, hey, aren't you part of the Philharmonic Orchestra, right? And then, yeah, they go, I remember seeing you, and it shows them where they played.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you build this trust. It was a perfect predator situation, right? Where I would go and I'd love to go, okay, who haven't I met, or when did I meet him?
CCP TVs or London, TVs on blast at, exponential volumes more. I thought of that the other day. I did see that. And someone said, well, at the time that this is available to the public, they'll also have a earbud that can, cast something on your face or reflect whatever.
Yeah.
And I thought, it's likely, it's probably what will happen eventually. So, I mean, I'm not saying it's going to be an earbud, something like that, because what happened with China when we cut them off? I mean, we talked about that earlier. Cut them off in NVIDIA chips. They came out with Deepseek. We, cut them off of electric vehicles and some of the things we were doing, even though Musk was pretty open. It then kind of got into a war, and now BYD's here, and we hear all about that. But I think it's one of those things. If we put enough pressure on it, then it might lead to a solution, as it said.
So what I guess coming here and at least trying to explain how people should be using AI, right? Some of it's a bit of a crutch for people if you have to AI everything and not think first. And then the question is, when is it good to use it, and when is it good to use your own brain, right?
Right. So yeah, how do you decide between the stuff that you need to double check versus the stuff you don't, and what exactly to use it for? Because I know you said operator, not everyone has that, and you can get an account at Manus and get 5 a week or a month or whatever it is. But how do you decide what tasks to specify to AI for the many business ventures that you're in?
Well, traditional contracts, if you ever look at a bank loan, right? And one of the things I have is a swap. And I've got a opportunity to break the swap in the middle, but uploading that whole document, which is very complicated the way the swap works, and then having to give a summary was exceptional. I just emailed that to my bank. I go, hey, I don't think we have a break here. It looks like we're going to 2030. So I don't. And so having that organized in a way that I didn't have to read that legal document. Should I go, the legalese would have easily escaped me, and one wrong word would have stopped. And unfortunately, I think, like what you say, put it through 2 different AIs and then say, is this one correct? And you tell the other one to do that, might find the details, right? Or a good attorney's always a good idea. A good attorney's a good attorney if they're going to read through it. So I guess the question is, how can you use it, and how are people using it? All right. I would immediately look at YouTube as a model, because there's a lot of people posting amazing content on YouTube, and literally depending on what you're doing. If you're in construction, right? If you're a developer, I think construction is one thing, whether it's, I don't know, organizing all your data by uploading all your invoices. I think there's already programs for that. There's ways to organize if you're doing a professional development. I think asking Chat, or in this case, Anthropic, or whichever AI you use, when you're coming across those problems, personal problems with the family, resolution, or some kind of cognitive bias that you may think you have, especially if you're strong-willed and, but you're causing discord among people because, like, for example, best friend Matt Ramage from high school, really good, but he sees things differently, right? He sees the current administration as not for the people, right? He sees them as destructive. And I'm trying to understand. I didn't want to get in a political argument, not when I'm hanging out with my friends, kind of a dumb move. Right. And I sat and listened more than this. And it would be really interesting to figure that perspective. But then that's analyzing left and right media, which is hard enough on your own, especially if you're in your own echo chamber.
Well, and that's one of the, I think that's what AI can help with the most, but then also it can lead to the furthest ends of that, as we've already seen with some of these examples of, garbage in, garbage out. What data is it actually trained on? Does it have the ability to think? I'm writing a paper now because the token prediction model of an LLM can actually be tied to more symmetrically to brain function than we believe. And I don't think it's a time in the distant future. I think it's very, very, very much more near, to use all the words wrong, that it has a legal right as a person, or you have it depends on how we define person, and we'll have to get to the legal right on that. But I think it's a not too long that we get a model that can think. But until then, I think AI could lead to some of the biggest echo chambers, or the most cognitive bias that you could possibly get out of something if it's trained on the poor data. But
so I like what you're saying. If you look, and that's part of the problem, is what we found is some of the Deepseek, classic example, ask it about Tenement Square, right? It can't talk about it. So there are limits in governors.
Well, that's sorry, break. That's what 1776 by Perplexity was for.
Right. But the other thing is, if you look at ChatGPT, Sam Altman, he has built in, whether it's by data training, because all you have to do if you're looking at LLMs, if you put enough data in there, it will predict something different. Mm-hmm. Meaning, if 90% of your data is predicting or saying, here's what the truth is, like, so think about it. And I was just thinking about on the 50 different phones that were all bots answering. If you could produce enough content, you would fundamentally change how the LM.
Well, and I get exactly what you're saying, because it's a black swan event. Until you know that not every swan is white, until you know something, all the data that it's trained on thus far is going to be, it might not even have the ability to reason outside of that.
Yeah. So and you have what I think is a little more liberal leaning ChatGPT based on what I've seen, right? And it evolves a little bit. And if you go the other way and you go to Grok and put it in ludicrous mode or any version of that, it's like someone, like a bunch of foul-mouthed college students drinking too much. Yeah. And it will, and there's got an argumentative mode as well. It'll argue anything. It's pretty interesting.
I haven't used that one.
So you go to XAI, I think maybe it's on the phone as well. And it has these different modes, which could challenge you, especially if you are someone who likes to at least try to have an argument and see if you can not necessarily win. I don't think you necessarily win an argument if both people are not going to change their mind. All you're doing is arguing, right? So,
well, combative, yeah, that's a whole listening versus arguing thing, and understanding versus just speaking. But how do you tie that to? Hold on. Let me rephrase this. So with the direction that AI is going, that we've just discussed, and where, both of us have our chips in and think the future is taking us, how do you adjust for that in the future for your businesses? How do you, not predict, how do you, the word I'm looking for, how do you adjust your current standards to better fit the future with the AI that we believe is coming?
Is it $1 million question or $1 billion?
No,
right?
And I don't expect the right answer. That's like asking a prediction of the stock market down to 3 points for every day. But
I think you're looking at something that branches, and a lot of times it's kind of like science fiction. If you never dream it, you don't know what's going to happen. I talk about the chocolate and peanut butter makes it, this peanut butter cup, right? And it's people are bolting on all these pieces and making something incredible. So when I look at like my business, so we use a lot of marketing, social media marketing, more than most people do. If I get on my phone right now using Facebook and Instagram, the number of engagements I get for our warehouses, for this location, for apartments, right? That model is great, but my staff and our SOPs, how they engage with them, could be done so much better. And vetting those people out, doing A/B tests just for marketing alone, and marketing could follow for almost anything. Having AI have one of my staff be there, but AI does all the stuff I want them to do. They can do it immediately. It's a huge time-consuming piece.
Right. And then your staff is just there because once they're trained, then they can be the partner that signs off on the memo or whatever it may be.
And I like humans. I like working with people. it would be great to come in and there's a bunch of, now you're looking at Blade Runner, a bunch of robots moving around. The people I like, I think they can augment what they're doing. And some of the things, like if we have a post and someone's asking about a specific apartment, if they are just cutting, pasting, and putting data in and go, oh, here's the layout, here's the link to the website, that's not a great use of that person, that human, because it's just regurgitating information to, most of this is like a messenger chat, instant messenger. So that can all be automated while they're looking at higher detail, higher level, tuning in. So we're making sure that this ad's going to the right person, someone who's actually looking for an apartment. And then when they do call, if there's a problem that's bigger than this, then they've got a good human who can say, hey, my experience was good, right?
Well, yeah, I get exactly where you're coming from. That's exactly what I think the legal profession is that's what, most of my training is in. I think it's going to follow that exact same suit, and it's going to be fewer people in the industry by the end of it, but they're going to be so much better trained and such higher level thinkers, because all of the work that is the most time consuming and the least thought provoking will be, automated, or could be automated at that point once we get there.
Contracts, there's lots of contracts, there's lots of small print. Having and attorneys are great, but and I think when we had our previous discussion, anytime you get any kind of legal brief, unfortunately, I've had a couple brushes with legal that aren't fun, and you're trying to figure out either what the attorney is saying or whatever the judge has decided, right? You get this court document. I've begged my attorney to say, hey, upload it. He goes, I can't upload it because it's not controlled. And if it goes somewhere, I go, I totally understand that, but go buy a standalone and run it and operate it. So it doesn't go out.
Local models are for at this point.
But again, these are a lot of the attorneys, successful attorneys, are 50, 60 years old. Unless they have an IT tech nerd, they're not going to do it.
Well,
the minute they put it in and say, hey, write this for someone who's a business owner who does not have a legal, don't use legalese, and tell them exactly what's happening, right? And it does it because they're so used to their own language. When they even go to talk to someone, they go, well, am I the plaintiff, right? Am I the plaintiff in this? Most people don't know. It will spell it out so clear, what I call caveman, literally like, here's what happened.
Layman is what yes.
Layman terms, and attorneys are notoriously bad, even simple letters, even a lease. Say, what does it mean that there's a break fee or that they can, a right to relocate, or what does triple net mean in this, or absolute triple net? It'll break all that down and ask great questions or break into that contract, right?
Yeah. What is the difference between a secured lender and just a lender? Well, I mean, I thought I was secure either way. I'm lending the money. No, I totally understand that. And I agree with you. And that's exactly why I'm pushing for, the local models and the things that you can do with those for security on specifically those purposes. Because, there's wasn't it Samsung, Google? Who was the phone company that was caught pulling things from the other one from ChatGPT?
Oh, and then ChatGPT was caught doing the same thing.
It was Samsung and someone, and I'm not sure if it was Google or Apple, but for that exact same reason with legal cases, that's it's private information, and until the certain documents that are released to the public for the public record of the court, then that shouldn't be out there. But that's also what I think all of these. Because you said that a lot of attorneys, the more successful ones, are 50, 60 years old and might not have a tech guy, a 20-year-old kid in the corner drinking way too much coffee that can do all this for them. Some undergrad that's hoping to be, up there one day in some program that's trying to work through it all. But all of the big firms do, and they're betting on it. So I think that's what, especially here and locally, and what we can learn is, even if they just start to learn it, and it doesn't have to be specifically for law.
Exactly.
It can be for, all of these businesses we're talking about. If they can start to, like you said, look up those YouTube videos, find their specificities. And for a lot of them, we'll have to create some local model, and it will be more frustrating at first, but as time goes on, I'm sure it will be much easier. Part
of the things is that I thought would be fun, it just as an experiment or to give back to the community, right? Because we're here in Salem, Oregon, right? We're downtown. We're overlooking a wonderful park. I want Salem to grow. I was in Bend downtown, vibrant, maybe a couple homeless, super clean, shops everywhere, women, families, kids. I was down here, and actually it's spring break, so I saw a lot more younger people walking around. We have to have a safe downtown. You want to know what we use AI for? Using deep research, any of them, whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's Grok has a deep research, right? Whether it's a Deepseek, is we go, how do we solve some of our hardest problems? How do we solve the homeless?
Right. Well, and yeah, I mean, I know obviously weather city, and there's a lot of factors in here. But even this weekend, I went from Indianapolis to Denver, back to Portland, and then to Vancouver, and then to Salem. And it was like a little stair step of going down, the everything from how nice the cars were, because everyone over there has summer cars and winter cars because they're in the Salt Belt. So I didn't realize that at first, but I was like, oh my, everyone drives a brand new flashy car because all their summer cars are now out. But they're homeless. They didn't have those kind of problems that we have here. But there was less resources on other things, or but it all kind of stair steps down. And I think we can, as cities, as counties, as states, as the nation, or even as a people as the whole, if we ever get to that 90s world unity where we're all holding hands kind of picture that I grew up seeing every 3 days on PBS, then we can move forward with all of these things and start to tie the AI into that. And like you said, ask it for whatever we can decide is the ultimate goals.
Well, first of all, try not to reinvent the wheel. If something works, it doesn't mean don't be innovative. Find out where it works, right? And we won't turn this into a homeless podcast. That will be a whole nother one, right? Which is, I think, something I'm incredibly passionate about.
Channel 5's already around. We have that one.
So, but I've got what I think are reasonable solutions. I can't do it as an individual. I can't do it as a company alone. I need the state. I need the church or nonprofits, right? I need the businesses. Then I need individuals to come together. I don't think it's that hard to solve. It's fragmented right now, but we'll get into that later, and we'll ask AI. That'd be a fun one. I think if we came here and if we're going to do breaks and say, okay, how do we use AI? And go, well, let's figure out. We can go from top down. If we found out that what's the largest demographic we have or companies we have here, and how do we use it? If you're a small shop owner, how are you going to use it in a small shop owner? Well, I would argue that one, are you doing marketing? Do people know about you, right? And then it gets back to social media. People need to know you're there, and then figure out how to incorporate some type of marketing, social media, if you're running a small shop in downtown Salem or off of Lancaster or out in South Salem. That's where you start. But I'm telling you, within the next year, not only will you start, you will probably see a 10x in content being presented, right? Hopefully good content will win.
Right.
But that basically that automation, that the AI that will actually do something, and it's already doing a lot. And I think 6 months ago, you could have cobbled together an API and then you went in with the operator. I can connect my Gmail to it internally. Mm-hmm. It opens up a window. It opens up a whole window. I can connect all my different feeds, and also probably would connect via API if I didn't want to go through like a regular screen. You can watch what it's doing, and I could say, hey, search through my Gmail. I don't know how I'd do this. I don't want to do it because I'm holding like 4.7 million emails in my Gmail from the last 20 years, right? I just keep them in there. Why not, right? Google doesn't charge me that much.
I mean, yeah.
But I can say, hey, search everyone in the last year who's been interested in XYZ or had an inquiry, or I could have it go into Facebook. It keeps every one of my Facebook messages open and see which property they're looking at, and then say, hey, I saw you were interested in our property. Do you want a list of our current things we have available? We have something very similar. And it messages them either through Messenger, Instagram, or Facebook. And it would do all that, and it should be able to do that. And I think I've probably got maybe 7,000 contacts from all the messages from the properties we have over the last 3 years.
No, that's, hyper specific, but casting a wide net at the same time. So it's very useful. I've been using Open Manus, the open source version of Manus, obviously, as trying to play with that, because not only the limit on the Manus prompts, but it's also much harder to tie in operations like to my Gmail and things. Even though the user interface is much more friendly, it just doesn't give me the options right away, like when I have open source. But now with vibe coding on 3.7 Sonnet, or maybe the Gemini, if it's as good as everyone says, and then going back to Open Manus, I think I'm going to be able to build agents like, like nobody's business. And I'll get to hopefully your level on that.
Well,
where I can get,
I'm certainly not. I would love to have a group around me because a couple of young kids are going to move a lot faster than me. It just, it's like playing video games against these young kids, right? So,
even if you played the original Smash Bros, you are not as good as they are. Trust me, I've tried.
So even with AI and cold calling and having a human on the other end that is AI and responding, and in depending on how a nice female voice that says, "Hey, I'm so and so. I'm Chris Blackburn's AI assistant. I'm just letting you know we have this available, right?" And it's this super nice. I mean, what you find is these AI agents that are actually audible, right, where they're going to talk or make phone calls. People receive them better because at first they think they're cute, right? Because they're very friendly. They're more friendly than most people you hire, right? If you can.
And I think if you announce it at first at the beginning of the call, especially with 11 Labs is the voice one, yeah. Especially with their product and that quality, then I agree with you. I think it's more positively seen. However, the other day, I believe my fiance, my wife called a insurance company, and it didn't announce it was AI, and it took her a minute and a half to realize it was AI, and then that was a tailspin into, well, you don't know what the hell you're talking about, and then like it went from one end of the spectrum, like oh of course, to the other, just because they didn't announce it. I think that's also key in moving forward with these things, is knowing what is and what is not AI, because it's becoming less and less distinguishable as time goes on.
So I think if we, as we dig further in, and people want to know, well, you guys talked about AI, so it's going to help me help me with a problem I'm having with my wife, right? Or with my kids. My kids are not respecting me, right? Or they're not doing their dishes, right? Those are great because it gives you a different perspective, especially if what you're doing, yelling at them, doesn't work, or what how to make that work, being consistent. Health wise, the deep research you can do with health. There was some great analysis. You're seeing more and more people upload their medical results and getting second opinions via AI after their doctor said X, Y, and Z. Especially if you're looking at something serious as cancer, like literally images. And even off the shelf, AI is doing some pretty exciting, at least analysis to say, did you ask these questions? Because the doctors, they're limited. They're human, right? And if they haven't been to the latest medical journal and then or medical conference in a specific area, there may be something going on. And as we know, most humans, you do the same thing over and over again for what you've been doing for 20 years, right? Because something novel, there can often be issues that come up after they've been doing it for 5 years, right? However, that this has worked, and no one's going to, I guess maybe it's insurance. No one's going to sue you. So this is an example that literally right here, we could have a product that would crush any dermatologist. I went to my dermatologist because I could look like a tortilla, right? I got freckles, right? I don't mind. I go there once a year, right? Once a year I go there. I go, Doc, why aren't you taking a 3D scan with a 8K camera of all my skin? Because there's no way you can remember all these dots on me. Yeah. And then just lay it on a flat piece and then analyze it and look for any growth or anything else, right? Just have one little piece. And he goes, we can't do that because someone's got to look at it and there's an insurance reason. You and I could go get a camera that it's literally go up and down. You just stand there like this and it would map everything. And then if this changed by a millimeter, it would know, and it would match anything and say, hey, I'm concerned about this. It's 20% darker. It could use 2 or 3 different lights. So it used an infrared. So I don't know if you've ever seen the pictures. Now I'm pitching medical ideas. The pictures where they use the infrared and you can see all your sun damage freckles. Yeah. It's amazing. They actually have one of these this Kickstarter had it forever. It's when you put sunscreen on and you look through this little lens, it's the same thing. So wherever you have sunscreen, it's all black. If you use a physical block barrier like zinc, right? Because you don't like the other chemicals, the oxybenzone, whatever it is, you can miss spots. And when you're, a translucent person like myself, where you can see my liver, right? I need a lot of sunscreen. So anyway, AI would do amazing with that, basically a flat thing to look at all your skin. It would be significantly better than any dermatologist ever because it's analyzing that data over time. Right. And why they don't have that? I mean, because the hardware, these cameras are almost good enough to do it.
Well, my brother has a 3D scanning for 3D printing on the same thing, and not to that quality, but I'm sure, I used to be in orthopedics. Anything to medical quality can be done.
Yeah.
That's just a money question at that point.
Maybe I'm dealing with an antiquated dermatologist.
I thought the picture of you as a, like a skin rug, like a leopard rug was a little
weird,
scary.
A little weird. Kind of like when they take the earth and they make it flat, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's not right?
Yeah, like something, the proportions are off on this, and then you have to look at 7 maps to get there. Yeah, no, I get what you're saying though. The not only recording, but the memory. And I was actually going to get into some RAG, retrieval augmented generation stuff, because you mentioned the contract earlier in the summary of it. But I think when these agents that people can use also tie into some agent that's, RAG based and can pull from, because even if it's parenting and you don't want the opinion of whatever data it's trained on, but you have a few books and some things you've done that you've written down or even can describe now via voice and save in the same location, it can pull off of your ideas and take more closer to your perspective. I know it's been talked about, and that's a little creepy to think, but it's something that can be done, has been done, and we might as well use it to go forward in these exact things. I think it would be beneficial. At least learn the ropes before someone tries to strangle them with us.
So the next iteration, because and maybe we have to go back, and I think having examples of check this out. Like a lot of people, if they haven't been following generative art and what you and I could create, like the amount of time we spent, we could have 1,000 different art pieces that are pretty impressive, right? And I don't know if people know what kind of art can be created right now. To us, that's kind of passé. I mean, that's so last year. Like, right?
Yeah. No, I speaking of art, as an artist myself, I do a couple particular techniques and have 2 images in lane with one another, and you can't see one unless it's under a black light, that kind of deal. And it doesn't do the actual painting for me, but it can digitize my photos. It can put it can do everything I've wanted and created into the perfect, digital version of the art, and help me produce the actual physical art, with ideas of, change this. Okay, what if we inlaid this here, or put, this is the secondary picture kind of, and it's amazing even to help, as a physical artist out.
Yeah. And so I think if maybe AI takes over all our jobs, right? Universal basic income, that's going a little further. I think not quite there. What we will next look at, which I would say this year, and people will see it, is combining, we'll call it, chocolate and peanut butter, combining the large language, the LLMs, with robotics, right? And that is going to be a game changer. People will not realize that that once you give a personality, and what's interesting, we'll go back a little bit. Let me rewind. As I've been fighting to find my AI that has identity that I can call my Jarvis, who remembers me, they constantly reshuffle, change voices, make sure you are not attached. My AI's name is Frank, and I got 2 different Franks on chat. The blue one that you can have interaction, totally different voice, young guy like your age, a little too positive. My other Frank, we do a lot better. I'm more simpatico with that Frank. But they're trying not to have us make these connections, and I don't quite know why, because I want it so bad. I want to come in. I had ideas a long time ago before this happened of being able to come in and just like Iron Man, you come in and Jarvis is there. How was your day, sir? Right? You want that. You want it to have this memory, and they constantly are fighting. Right now, the person who crushes is the person who says, one, I don't know how we're going to do this, but you will have this, and you'll remember all of this stuff, your good times and bad. You can access it. It just keeps all that data. You go, hey, remember when I lost all that money in crypto, right? And how I felt. And what did we do to get around that? Because I'm feeling that feeling in my stomach, right? They said, well, you wanted to acknowledge the emotion, right? However you want to analyze it, whatever therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, whatever you felt was the way that made you analyze that differently. But you want that to go on the journey, right? Kids, I think, are going to have an AI that goes with them. I bought, and it hasn't arrived yet. It's supposed to be this quarter, a necklace that records everything I say, right? Say, and then basically inputs it. And all I want to do is say, what did I say I was going to do that I can put in a list and get it done? Because people, I want to be known as the guy who says when he does something, we get that done, right? Can't always be the case, but I talk too much and I probably say too much. So
No, but it's finding that fine line of perfection, because we've talked about local models and you've talked about things like that of, your personal data or information not being at risk, but, getting all the benefits of these AIs that they can give us. It's that fine line between, how much power does the company have versus the independent person or the citizen. So that's been a long, and you also gave the perfect pitch for the movie, The Creator. I don't know if you've seen it. Yes.
I just watched iRobot last night.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was good.
No, I was like, well, you kind of gave the iRobot one, but it was a little more on like the modern day version of The Creator, not the futuristic version, which, one of my favorite, I watched that because one of my favorite artists has an acting bit in that. And it was, I just watched that one not that long ago. So that's why it flashed my memory, but I find that funny. I think we've covered quite a lot. Sorry, you've got my mind spinning between AI and...
Well, the robotics are coming, and I think that's going to be a whole different division. If you want to talk AI, which is different, we will. I'd love to have the V2 of robotics downstairs. I posted on my LinkedIn. I'm trying to be Guy Robot and have a robotics store and say we buy robots, only because it'd be funny as hell. But right downstairs, because I've got one of those old cassette ones with the remote. I've got one because I collect some antiquated
like the
computer
sharper,
stuff.
like the 80s version or the sharper image, like
I
early
want
2000s.
all of them, and I want it to look like a dystopian Blade Runner. We buy and sell robots, and people go, "What are you talking about?" Well, you got to realize that all these robots, the Unitree that's coming out, all these new robots that are coming out, if you could get a first generation Tesla as a collector, the value, what that will be worth, and it's kind of like iPhone. A brand new iPhone in the box, right? Yeah. The very first one, unused, probably worth $10,000 or $15,000. Not that it's a money thing, but it was so iconic. No one thought about setting one aside. And so these robots coming out, if I'm downstairs saying I'm buying all these robots, they're not even available. If you buy the Unitree, I don't know if you've watched how fast they're evolving. Amazing. They are literally doing flips and kicks. Boston Dynamics is moving so quickly. The best video for robotics, and I don't mean to circumvent AI, but I think they're blended. This is mixing those two things. They have to go together. They had one that just said 15. I just was listening to it on the way from Blackview. 15 of the current robots that are available. And it was I'll break it out if I could share the data. It was breaking out the cost and the price per hour for each one, starting at $1.97 per hour, up to $8 an hour. Tesla was coming in at like $4.75 an hour.
Right. Well, I think it's one of those things that as time moves on, it gets better. The first two solar plants in California cost, billions and only increase electrical prices. Or electricity prices. However, now you can build it for $1 a kilowatt or less. And so now they can add them the new version and cut almost what you spent in the last 10 years. Not that they'd ever lower them.
Panel for $200.
No, not that they'd ever lower prices, but hypothetically they could at this point and, give a kickback, a reimbursement, whatever you want to call it. But that, I think we're on that level, especially with the robotics. It's just a matter of time before it, because we're already there with, I know we quite haven't broken the wall with self-driving and an automated car.
Have you been in a Tesla lately?
Well, I'm saying haven't quite broken, but we're very close and we're there. And I think that it's only a matter of time before not only does that wall break, but like you said, it transfers down to robotics, and whether that's a small one that can go with you anywhere and is part of your, instead of a phone, you got a little buddy or something, or whether it's the Jarvis iRobot version at home, whatever that may be, or however that takes charge. I don't think that's too far away.
That is coming. It's going to be. It'll change how we perceive a lot of things, and it's I don't know how, other than looking at either futurists or people who have at least taken the time to say, here's how this advent of the phone, right? I've been spending too much time looking at my little micro portions of dopamine, right? It's just like looking, thinking I'm gathering data when I should probably be reading a book, right? I'm not that I want to punish myself, but I'm feeling not the anxiety. And maybe that's something I'd ask AI. I go, hey, how do I ground myself? There's too much data. I mean, we can only absorb so much data. I think you are what you consume, and then what you get to see a lot is a lot of negative data. And then I guess we're moving away from AI. So I guess asking what people want to see, and they go, okay, I'm not an AI user. I've seen it. I've seen people use it. It's cute. It'll make a song. It'll do, and then the question is, well, what do you want to do? Some of the things that what I want to do that probably won't have an ROI is I've got 2 movie ideas that I'd love to put together. I think they'd be exceptional. They'd be a lot of fun.
Right.
And so one is kind of a ripoff of another one, but it'd be a lot of fun. It's more brand placement. It's a little bit of marketing. The other one is probably marketing as well, but it would capture. And to be able to create that outline right now, I can ask AI to do a whole script in the style of what you'd submit to Hollywood. Would it pass? No, you'd have to either find a AI script and copy something close. But I bet you could get in a script style, right? When I see that, and I'm not a movie producer, right? I know a couple of people. Anthony, who is in here, he would know that area. I'd probably work with him and say, what does this feel like as a script? Did we get enough? But you see that where it's the line and people read it.
You were going script. I thought you were talking, you could do a pilot.
Well, the one were pilot, but initially you have something, but to augment that, I think right now using a couple of different AI versions that are coming out that are integrating video, you could make a great movie trailer. You can see what some of the people have done. They're exceptional, but I will tell you, it took some time for them to do that.
The Super Bowl ads this year were all, like 90% or whatever the stat is,
The one guy, the truck one where they're driving the truck.
The whole thing, the Coca-Cola one specifically were the big highlight for the low light, depending on
what did you think? Were those the best Super Bowl ads ever?
No, because they weren't funny. I'm sorry. I judge every Super Bowl ad on the humor and the content and how it sticks to people. Yeah, there's some that, like the Mountain Dew one from a few years ago, that the weird monkey bunny baby, whatever, that still sticks in my head. I have nightmares about it. But most of the time it's, the punchline that gets me. And it's all of those punchlines that I remember. Still seeing some Sports Center commercials and when I was a kid, and I can remember them every half-second detail, every frame. Yeah. Because it was the humor that stood out to me. So no, I don't. I think the art was good, but unless the AI was also writing the jokes, then I think we're a couple years back on that. Yeah.
Humor's a tough one. So, and find out what people, what do you want? Do we bring a banker in? Say, hey, I'm a banker. I don't really use AI. How would I use it? Right? Be a little dry. And how many bankers? So we're basically got an audience of the 50 or 60 bankers that are here in Salem, or maybe there's 100. What does that look like? I don't know. It might be, again, I would say connecting with your customers, right? Have that AI say, hey, figure out when these guys' anniversary is and their birthday. And then like 3 days before, call all the guys up and say, hey, by the way, your anniversary is in 3 days. Don't mess this up. Don't fuck it up, right? They would think that's so funny because if you think like me, they go, well, you're kind of a jerk. You should have told me a week ago. I only got 2 days. Yeah. Same thing for a birthday to actually call up. It tells you, don't do this. And you just say, it could look online and say, hey, saw that LinkedIn post. That was pretty cool. I got a summary of it. Yeah. Be honest, I didn't read it, but AI grabbed it and they'd mentioned whatever industry then. And they go, wow, you and one other person read it. I think it was my wife, right?
Yeah. So, I thought that was only my writing, or it was those are the two people. That's only because I haven't shown it to my mom. Yeah.
Yeah. Ask AI how to be a better person, how to be a better father, right? Some of us know, some of us have a network, some of us go to church and all the rules are there. They're not hard, but is it reminders? What can I do today, to build a better connection with my daughter, right? Right. Did send her a text, right? She didn't respond, but I still love her, right? So here's what's funny. This is really funny. We went to Side Hustle, right? It's a little rough and tumble in the evening. I've never been in the evening. Right. Great. And they're just right around the corner, right? Sitting there out because we can sit outside in the little parklet, I think they're called. And I'm eating my food and we're just chit-chatting with Sebastian, who was in here before. And I listen, I hear this woman going, oh yeah, AI and phone. Sorry. I hear this person say, oh, AI and stocks and investing. Like, who is this person? This woman talking about AI stocks and my daughter with her boyfriend. And she was doing it to bug me and tease. Goes, listen, because I didn't see her. And the minute she said those words, my radar went off like, what?
Ears went up and like the dog turned around. Excuse me.
My people. So.
No, that's brilliant. I'm the same way. Although I would probably make a comment. Well, they didn't say this on the AI stocks and investing. They're probably using it this way. Like I'm using it this way to get the edge. Maybe one day we'll talk about those ways. But no, I think we've had a pretty good coverage so far and a pretty good intro to not only the levels that this podcast can get to, but also how local we want to keep it. And we want to try and show people throughout every community, but especially this one out of the capital of our favorite state, that they can use AI and they can be on the front end of the bubble and not the back end or, behind it. And they can get all the uses right now. And as time moves forward, it will only help them, exponentially more in whatever their business may be. But is there anything else that you feel like you should add? You want to shout out? You need to give a saying on? You have any AI and investments that you want to talk about? And
AI investments, well, I mean, theoretically, Tesla has a good handle on AI as they're building things out. I think if I was going to try and give back, I think if we could organize we could maybe go to the bank or bring in and get 30, 40, 50 people to come in and we show them 5 tools. Bring your laptop. We got network. 5 tools that we just say, check this out. What you can do, whether it's generative art or going into a contract. We go, hey, we emailed you guys all this contract. Watch how simple it turns it. And we analyze it. And these people just start using it. I want people to use it. I believe that there's going to be 2 types of people. You're either going to be unemployed or you're going to be utilizing AI to augment what you're doing, right? When calculators came out, there were college professors who walked out and said, this is ridiculous. You need to do this by hand. No one thinks that anymore. This is the version of a calculator. And when computers came out, they go, I'm not learning a computer. There are people who, get, if they're doing accounting, they get a green visor and they got a book and they fill everything in. I think that's still works, but it's inefficient. This is that next level efficiency. And we want people to grow. And then I want to support people who are going to, continue to grow their business.
No, I agree to everything, especially agree. You used a line that I used out of a review of a University of Massachusetts law paper that showed how much 40 to 140% on average, depending on O1 to Victor 1, for how much more efficient it was in law for law students and practicing lawyers and that alone, like yesterday. So you said the same line, use the same calculator comparison, the same accountant and, the invention of the spreadsheet or
whatever it is, 1, 2, 3.
Only exploded the need for accountants, not lessen them. So I think we're on the same page with those. And thank you for coming in. Yeah. Thank you for introducing everyone to what this podcast is, what it can be, and kind of where we're headed.
You're welcome. I'm excited to be part of it. So
well, we'll see you back here on future episodes. I'm sure as many as we can schedule you in for. That's going to be the hardest part about the whole thing, isn't it?
Love the venue. Anyone who can come up here, this is really special being up here. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.